He started as a school teacher. Now millions watch every time he calls somebody out.
What about The Rock? You think he's natural?
Oh, he's absolutely not natty. They said he did a 12-week training program for WWE, and he had a full six-pack, leanest he's ever been. He's 53. I'm like, guys, he's on everything. Not only do I not think he's natural, I don't think he's on HRT. I think he's on the kitchen sink.
Really?
I think he's on all of it and then some.
He is known by many names: Coach Greg, the Natty Police, the Cookbook King, or just the guy who screams at the beginning of every video. Greg Doucette has built a life off controversy, contradiction, and some charisma. With millions of views and a voice that could pierce steel, he's one of the most recognizable figures in the online fitness world, and possibly one of its most controversial, maybe behind Mike Israel. From humble beginnings as a Canadian school teacher to becoming an IFBB pro, YouTube sensation, and then supplement mogul, Greg's story is one of ambition, some intelligence, and relentless self-promotion, but behind the hustle lies a darker narrative, one filled with hypocrisy, legal trouble, and entire moral collapse. Over the years, Greg has made a name for himself by calling out influencers who claim to be natural while secretly using steroids. His infamous Natty or Not series turned him into a self-proclaimed truth teller, a man who exposed lies in the fitness industry, but ironically, that same crusade for honesty would later come back to haunt him.
If I was a betting man and you showed me this guy's picture, I would bet for sure he's not natural.
Because soon, Greg himself would be accused of the very thing he spent years fighting against. From the Hussein Farhat scandal, where Greg went from calling a young influencer a fake natty, to making him a co-owner of his own supplement brand, to the endless feuds with other fitness creators like the Trend Twins, Brandon Harding, and Mike Israel, Greg's online presence became less about truth and more about traffic.
It was clearly designed in this way. The Trend Twins posted themselves in posing trunks, highly sus. I'm pointing out what everyone was thinking about.
He's been caught in countless controversies, like promoting sketchy supplements like Turkesterone. He's been exposed for past steroid trafficking charges, criticized for exploiting clients and manipulating younger athletes, and even accused of faking his own natural status years before he was caught doping. But it doesn't stop there. Greg's story also dives into the personal. His battle with narcolepsy, addiction to work, shadow bans across social media, and the emotional toll of living inside a cycle of drama, validation, and burnout.
I could not sleep. It was so bad. I was in Mexico and I was sleeping like 3 hours.
Some call him a fraud. Others call him a pioneer, but at the end of this video, you can draw your own conclusions. So who is the real Coach Greg? Greg Doucette's story begins in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He had a quiet Canadian upbringing that would later contrast with the chaotic, high-volume persona he's known for today. Long before the YouTube fame, the drama, and the supplement empire, Greg lived a surprisingly ordinary life. He studied kinesiology in university, building a foundation rooted in the science of training and the mechanics of the human body. That academic background would eventually become a key selling point in his career. The science-backed coach who wasn't just loud, but formally educated. Before stepping into the spotlight, Greg spent 11 years working as a high school teacher, juggling lesson plans day by day and gym sessions by night. Students saw him as the muscular teacher with endless energy. Colleagues knew him as the guy who lived and breathed bodybuilding even while grading papers. Teaching gave Greg a structure, a stable routine, steady income, and the discipline that later shaped his branding. Strict, blunt, no nonsense. But even during his teaching years, bodybuilding was his real passion. Greg competed extensively, entering dozens of shows across Canada. He chased pro status relentlessly, grinding through training cycles, contest preps, and the grueling process of cutting and bulking. This early competitive drive became the root of his entire personality. The obsession with progress, discipline, and proving people wrong. By the time his teaching career ended, Greg had already planted the seeds of something bigger.
I was a school teacher for 11 years. Okay. And I got my master's in physical education and kinesiology. And then I moved out of teaching and just started being I became a pro bodybuilder. And I just pushed coaching even more.
Yeah.
Greg uploaded his first YouTube video in 2006. A grainy clip of him bench pressing 415 pounds for reps. No commentary, no edits, no gimmicks, just raw strength. It didn't go viral, didn't spark a movement, and didn't foreshadow the empire to come. but it marked the beginning of everything.
2006 is when I first started putting videos up, but I'm gonna be honest, I was just trying to show off. I was just really strong in the gym. I could bench press a lot, and I was just uploading bench press, squat videos and stuff.
For nearly a decade, Greg's channel sat quietly in a corner of the fitness community. He wasn't chasing drama or clout. His videos were simple and informational, with fitness tutorials, diet breakdowns, metabolic explanations, cutting tips, and long-form rants delivered in a calm, almost monotone voice that feels unrecognizable compared to the high-pitched, energetic coach of today. These early years were the purest version of Greg. These were also the years where Greg began establishing serious credibility as a coach. With a master's degree in kinesiology and decades of personal competitive experience, he offered something few creators had at the time: actual qualifications.
What really happened was I was coaching everyone in Halifax, the city I'm from, and I couldn't really expand anymore, and I thought, I gotta go global. So I started making videos in like 2011 about how to diet, calories and food labels, how to do that, and then I started getting clients from around the world. One guy was Ian Valere, who became a Mr. Olympia bodybuilder.
He wasn't just another gym bro with an opinion, he could back it up with textbook knowledge and real-world results. From 2006 to 2015, he slowly grew an audience of dedicated fans who saw him as a reliable, science-driven mentor. He wasn't famous yet, but he was respected. As Greg continued uploading through the early 2010s, he slowly began to shape the voice that would define the first era of his online presence. Before the shouting, the Natty or not controversies, and the YouTube drama, Greg was simply the guy explaining the science behind fat loss, metabolism, and sustainable dieting in a way that regular people could actually understand. His videos zeroed in on the fundamentals: how calorie deficits worked, why fad diets failed, why metabolism wasn't broken, and the truth behind cheat meals.
Today's installment, I wanted to discuss cheat meals because it seems to be a very heated topic that a lot of people have different opinions on. My personal opinion is I don't believe in the cheat meal, especially the true cheat, which is basically you have a day, one day a week where you just eat crap all day long. You go to a Pizza Delight or Burger King, McDonald's.
He explained concepts like adaptive thermogenesis, energy balance, and meal timing with the clarity of a trained teacher and the practicality of someone who had lived the lifestyle for decades. Despite the low production quality, people gravitated toward the transparency. Greg didn't sugarcoat anything: no fake motivations, no magical shortcuts, no trendy hacks. If something was nonsense, he said it. If something worked, he explained why.
The coaching just expanded, like tripled my business. And then the more I went viral on YouTube, I was able to charge way more money for coaching. I quintupled my prices and had tripled the clientele. So I was making so much money coaching, it was absolutely ridiculous.
This honesty earned him a small but extremely loyal fan base. Viewers saw him as the rare fitness creator who wasn't trying to sell a scam or reinvent basic science. His tone was calmer than the explosive delivery he later became famous for, but the foundation was already forming: blunt, direct, and obsessed with accuracy. During this period, Greg wasn't chasing fame, he was building trust. Without knowing it, he was laying the groundwork for the massive audience he'd gain later, when the algorithm, drama, and timing aligned in his favor. The early educational era didn't get millions of views, but it built something more important: credibility. And that credibility would become the backbone of everything Greg did next, both the good and the deeply controversial. Around 2018, Greg's channel underwent the shift that would redefine both his career and his public identity. After years of grinding with educational content that earned respect but not widespread attention, he stumbled into a format that would catapult him into full-blown internet fame: the Natty or Not series. What started as a simple idea of analyzing whether an influencer, celebrity, or bodybuilder was natural or using performance-enhancing drugs quickly became Greg's signature content. His early breakdowns were direct, analytical, and almost clinical. But the moment he applied the format to bigger names, everything changed.
If I was a betting man and you showed me this guy's picture, I would bet for sure he's not natural.
When he released the David Lade Natty or Not and the Rock Natty or Not, the views exploded.
David Lade, is he natural or is he enhanced? I've had literally more than 200 requests for this video alone. By far, the most requested videos are natural or not videos. I have more requests for this guy than everyone else put together. And I can see why. This guy has 1.3 million followers on Instagram and nearly 1 million followers on YouTube. He's 21 years old, extremely good looking, and because of what he looked like when he started and the strength that this kid has, it makes it so unlikely that he's natural that you may as well just say there's more chance he got struck by lightning and lived.
What about The Rock? You think he's natural?
Oh, he's absolutely not Natty. They said he did a 12-week training program for WWE, and he had a full six-pack, leanest he's ever been. He's 53. I'm like, guys, he's on everything. Not only do I not think he's natural, I don't think he's on HRT. I think he's on the kitchen sink.
Really?
I think he's on all of it and then some. You don't get big like that into your 50s compared to your 40s and 30s. Like, you see some photos of him in his 30s, he's way bigger and leaner now. Then you watch his little workout. This is The Rock, I'm gonna go through my leg workout. And then he gets in there. He had 2 plates on each side of the leg press. This is the waist. I'm like, it's his first set, he's warming up. No, he's stuck with that weight the whole time. So he did this workout, he's like, look how hard it is. 30-pound walking lunges. 2 plates was every exercise. I'm like, is he a bikini competitor? And he's faking how hard it is. You know, like, oh, yeah, he's grimacing.
Sounds like you don't like him because he's tall.
I love The Rock, which is the funny thing. I don't hate him for it, but it's like, come on. He's just training like a
These videos spread far beyond his regular audience and into the mainstream fitness ecosystem. Suddenly, everyone knew the loud Canadian guy with the high-pitched delivery and blunt attitude. The algorithm rewarded the controversy, and Greg saw firsthand just how powerful drama can be. Almost overnight, the channel shifted from slow, steady educational uploads to this rapid-fire reaction content. Greg realized that calling people out, questioning their authenticity, critiquing their physiques, analyzing their transformations brought in far more views than any scientific explanation ever had. And from that moment on, that was it. If he wanted growth, he had to lean into conflict. The Natty or Not series became the turning point that launched Greg into the spotlight, but it also set the tone for everything that would follow. The educator was still there, but a new persona began emerging. Louder, sharper, more confrontational, and increasingly shaped by the attention economy. With the momentum created by the Natty or Not era, Greg stepped fully into entrepreneurship, a move that would dramatically reshape his career, his public image, and eventually the controversies that followed. The first major milestone in this business evolution was the creation of the Anabolic Cookbook. It wasn't just another fitness nutrition guide, it became the cornerstone of Greg's brand. The book offered low-calorie, high-volume recipes, anabolic French toast, protein ice cream, low-calorie pizzas, all designed to let people eat more while staying lean. The cookbook captured the essence of his philosophy: stop starving, eat smarter, and lose weight without hating your life. What Greg didn't expect was just how massive the response would be. Sales exploded. For nearly 2 years, the cookbook was his primary income source, outselling anything he had ever done in coaching. It turned Greg from a regular fitness creator into a recognizable business figure with a global customer base. And once he realized the demand was bigger than anything he could have predicted, he made the next logical move. He launched his own supplement company. This is where things went nuclear. Greg entered the supplement space with the confidence of someone who had already built an audience willing to buy whatever he believed in. From there, nearly 90% of his income soon came from supplement sales. But no product would define this era more than Turkesterone.
What is Turkesterone?
Nobody knows.
Does Turkesterone build muscle?
Maybe, maybe not.
Will it help me get shredded?
Maybe, maybe not.
If I use it, am I still natural?
Maybe, maybe not.
Coach Greg, is it available on your website?
The Turkesterone boom became its own phenomenon. Marketed as a natural, plant-derived compound capable of increasing aggression in the gym, improving strength, and giving a harder, leaner look within days, Greg pushed Turkesterone as though it were the next frontier of performance enhancement. He compared its effects to mild steroids like halotestin, describing the surge of gym aggression and rapid visual changes he personally felt. For longtime viewers, this was unprecedented. Greg had gone from critiquing fads to selling one. It was marketed as so good that others started making videos about it as well.
A lot
lot of people keep asking me about just what is the natural testosterone I talk about. Well, it's not testosterone, it's called turkesterone. This is black forest turkesterone. This is actually the best it is. It's 95% max purity. This stuff will put meat on the bone, dude, I promise you. I did it, and trust me, I'm not gonna tell you a lie. I gained a ton of muscle mass, ton of weight, right? So if you wanna put muscle on the frame, other than anabolic steroids, this is the only thing that I would recommend.
He emphasized that his version was authentic and real, sourced from the correct Ajuga turkestanica plant rather than cheaper Chinese imitations, often using analogies like cheap weed versus quad A weed, or bargain whiskey versus rare bottles to illustrate what he believed was superior potency. Then came the controversy. Turkesterone appeared on WADA's watch list, and Greg openly speculated that being banned would actually increase demand.
It's on WADA's watch list, so it's not banned, so it's not a performance enhancing drug yet, but they also don't have the scientific methods to test for it. I think maybe at some point it might be banned, but it's not banned.
Well, that's
right
going to
now.
be terrible for business.
I think it would make the
definitely won't be
business
allowed back in America again.
So I think it would be absolutely amazing if it was banned but not labeled as a drug, like, if you know what I mean. Like, if it was banned but not. So I'll give you an.
He referenced previous supplements that were banned and then surged in sales because people believed if it's banned, it must work. In his view, a ban would not only validate the product, but skyrocket its popularity.
NMN was banned by, I don't know, pharmacy, whatever companies, that you couldn't sell it on Amazon and stuff. And so I was selling, like, I would say between 6 and 10 bottles a day. And then it's banned. I was selling like 1,000 because it was like, holy shit. It's banned. Greg wasn't lying. This actually can work. It like makes, it's like people say it's like a fountain of youth, but it just increases endurance and whatnot.
Yeah.
This mindset marked a dramatic shift in how Greg operated. Turkesterone was no longer just a supplement, it became the symbol of Greg's new identity as an entrepreneur thriving on hype, skepticism, and viral marketing. The cookbook had built his brand, the supplement line expanded it, but Turkesterone turned it into a full-blown empire and opened the door to the biggest criticisms of his career. As mentioned earlier, roughly 90% of his income came directly from supplement sales. Turkesterone, GLP-1 appetite suppressants, GO2 Max, pre-workouts, anabolic cooking tools. To his fans, this was smart marketing. To his critics, it was aggressive, manipulative, and often misleading, especially when product claims resembled steroid-level promises without the scientific backing. Parallel to the supplement boom, Greg's coaching business hit its own peak. With viral fame came credibility, and thousands of viewers started seeking personalized guidance.
Yeah, like $750,000 in a year from just coaching. And then I was like, okay, how do I like scale this up? Then I put out the cookbook. I'm making hundreds of thousands a year on just a cookbook, but like I was making millions before.
Greg claimed to earn hundreds of thousands annually from online coaching alone before eventually pivoting more toward broad digital products. Many fans viewed him as a fitness truth-teller, but a lot of others started to see the coaching side very differently, especially because of the inflated prices, vague deliverables, and coaching plans that felt more like recycled templates than personalized programs. Stories circulated about clients paying enormous monthly rates and receiving minimal feedback, or being directed to follow recipes from his cookbook rather than receiving tailored nutrition plans. What supporters interpreted as tough love coaching, skeptics labeled as exploitation. Regardless of which side people believed, one thing was undeniable. Greg had built an empire, and his business model was generating more attention, money, and criticism than ever before. And as Greg's channel grew, a new era took over, one built almost entirely on confrontation. This was the callout era, the period when his identity shifted from educator to enforcer, from fitness coach to self-appointed judge of the entire industry. Greg doubled down on reaction content, uploading multiple videos per day where he dissected the physiques, ethics, diets, and honesty of other influencers. His Natty or Not series transformed from a controversial experiment into the fitness world's version of a public trial, which was either a stamp of approval or a digital execution, depending on Greg's verdict. Young lifters, celebrities, TikTok stars, and even newcomers with small audiences found themselves on the thumbnails. For many, it became a badge of honor. For others, it marked the beginning of endless harassment from Greg's followers. But the momentum of this era truly took shape when Greg had his first major public fallout, the Brandon Harding drama. Harding accused Greg of delivering poor coaching, offering minimal personalization, and failing to provide the promised level of guidance despite charging premium fees.
I specifically told him from a coaching standpoint, I like to be told exactly what to eat, when to eat it, and how many grams of each ingredient I'm meant to consume.
Greg fired back, claiming Harding lacked discipline and didn't follow instructions.
They absolute lie. I don't like it when people lie about me and make up lies about me. That was slanderous lies about me.
The argument spiraled, exposing deeper frustrations about Greg's coaching style, his temper, and the ethics of charging huge sums for what were described as copy and paste plans. That conflict cracked open a larger conversation, one that Greg didn't see coming because suddenly people began to revisit all the other individuals Greg had publicly targeted over the years. Across his video catalog were countless examples of Greg mocking smaller creators like teenagers posting lifting clips, women sharing gym transformations, overweight beginners documenting their fitness journeys, and influencers who simply made diet videos he disagreed with. Many of these people had tiny followings and never expected to be thrust into the spotlight of a massive audience ready to ridicule them. Some broke down publicly, speaking about anxiety, emotional distress, and being overwhelmed by attention they never asked for. Others said the wave of negativity destroyed their confidence, ended their social media presence, or pushed them into unhealthy training and dieting habits to avoid being called out again. A growing chorus labeled Greg a bully, someone who built fame by punching down, stirring outrage, and using criticism as entertainment. While he defended everything as just education, the reality was harder to ignore. A long list of people felt they were collateral damage in Greg's rise to fame. When you line them up, the pattern becomes impossible to dismiss. Greg wasn't just exposing the fitness industry, he was shaping it through fear, controversy, and the constant threat of becoming his next target. But beneath that pattern were distinct disputes, each fueled by specific events, mistakes, and personal jabs that shaped Greg's reputation in the industry. The feud with Mike Israel began when Greg accused Mike of cherry-picking studies and promoting training volume recommendations that were impossible for natural lifters to sustain.
2 to 3 reps shy of failure is close to failure? Come on, no it's not. 2 to 3 reps shy of failure is a warm-up set for this boy. I don't train like a...
Mike responded with detailed breakdowns, explaining Greg's misunderstandings of scientific literature, essentially calling him uneducated on exercise science despite Greg's master's degree.
I'm going to train exactly this hard. Now, we can talk later about what this hard should be, but let's even say to failure, right? Just to standardize it. I'm going to go to failure in every single, I'm going to push it psychologically like crazy. After you've answered the question of how hard am I going to train, you say to failure, you have to answer the second question of, well, so how many sets am I going to do? Yes, there is a tendency for higher volume programs for you to get tired and not work as hard. So that may cap how much effective volume, non-junk volume you can do. But all the volume you do from the first set to the nth set, if you hold yourself accountable, you can do them with maximum intent to lift, all-out failure. You're still left with the question of how much, which unfortunately, I'm pretty sure I saw the entire video by Greg. He never actually answers the question of how much. He just says, go harder, and he yells a lot, which is funny, but...
Greg escalated by mocking Mike's physique and accusing him of selling unrealistic hypertrophy expectations. Mike fired back with calm, sarcastic videos pointing out Greg's contradictions, which only pushed Greg into further defensiveness. Their exchanges created a lasting tension between evidence-based training and Greg's practical bodybuilding experience, with fans mocking Greg as the loud, fake scientist and supporters accusing Mike of academic arrogance. His feud with Lex Little emerged during the Trend Twins controversy. Lex repeatedly criticized Greg for obsessively milking content out of younger influencers and using every minor misstep as a reason to upload another negative video. When Greg uploaded over 20 videos about the Trend Twins, Lex publicly called him a weird old man who feeds on drama, sparking a back and forth that highlights Greg's habits of punching down. Greg then doubled down, saying Lex was jealous and clout chasing, which only made the backlash worse. Similarly, Greg's friction with Jesse James West began when Greg repeatedly accused Jesse of exaggerating his Natty status, glamorizing unrealistic fitness expectations, and misleading viewers with staged training footage.
And so if Jesse James were right now saying, hey, I'm going to the Olympics, they would have watched this video and said, sorry, Jesse, you can't go, you're banned.
Jesse didn't retaliate directly, but he mocked Greg subtly in multiple videos, and fans flooded Greg's comments accusing him of chasing easy views by targeting creators more popular than him. Greg continued anyway, using Jesse as recurring content fuel and framing his critiques as necessary truth-telling. The Trend Twins saga may be Greg's most infamous feud, especially because initially, Greg praised them.
Their ambition to be IFBB pros and incredibly strong powerlifters, something I know a lot about. And they're only 21 years of age. And have you seen their genetics, their work ethic? And so of course I'm coaching them.
Greg gave them guidance during a period when they were still figuring out their direction in bodybuilding. They were young, reckless, openly taking PEDs, joking about Tren on camera, fighting each other in gyms, everything that made them viral. But they were also inconsistent, impulsive, and notoriously bad at sticking to diets or plans.
The Trend Twins are these guys, they remind me of me when I'm their age, except for the fact they're on gear. But they're powerlifters and bodybuilders, and they're exceptionally strong. So I'm coaching them for free, I'm coaching them. And I'm like getting the updates every week, and I'm like, you guys are not lean enough. Well, we want our pro cards by this year. I'm like, I don't think you understand how hard it is to diet to like 5% body fat. Like, I don't think you can get that lean. I'm like, here's a picture of me. I'm a 48-year-old man on HRT. This is how you should look 8 weeks out. Well, oh my God, you're so lean. I'm like, you're gonna have to be way leaner than this. So they weren't really keeping up, and they were, wanting cheats and stuff. Ended up, they didn't do the show. They backed out. They ended up getting a different coach.
Eventually, they left Greg and began working with Coach Kyle. A move that at first seemed like a normal coaching switch, but when they left his coaching for Coach Kyle, Greg released dozens of videos criticizing their physiques, prep choices, and maturity. The feud escalated further when Kyle accused Greg of behavior bordering on fetishistic, zooming in on the twins' crotch area, speculating about their genital size, and making inappropriate comments in his reaction videos.
Went as far as pausing the video on your end and highlighting their private parts. In numerous segments of your video, you pause on their junk.
As soon as the twins began gaining traction on YouTube and TikTok, Greg made them a recurring subject of his content machine. What started as a few critique videos quickly escalated into a full-blown fixation. Over time, Greg created more than 20 videos about them, with nearly half of those uploaded in just a 2-month span. And it wasn't insightful critique. It was nitpicking, antagonizing, and scolding disguised as education. Every physique update of theirs became a chance for Greg to tear them down. Every prep vlog was an opportunity to tell them they were unprofessional, out of shape, or clueless. Every accomplishment was immediately reframed by Greg to highlight their flaws. He repeatedly told his audience that the twins weren't in shape, weren't real competitors, and didn't deserve hype. He insisted that despite competing in true novice categories, they were actually experts who should be judged by pro standards simply because they had over 1 million followers. That logic baffled everyone. It felt less like critique and more like resentment. As highlighted earlier, in one of his reaction videos, Greg paused multiple times on shots of the twins posing in standard bodybuilding trunks. Instead of analyzing their conditioning, he zoomed in on their crotch area repeatedly.
Their little bikini bottoms for some reason, I don't know why, showing it off to everybody. And they were pointing it out.
He speculated about the size of their genitals. He compared their bulges.
I mean, I have to admit, 2 guys standing there in female posing trunks, it's a little sus.
After Coach Kyle released the video calling Greg out directly, accusing him of behavior that bordered on sexualized obsession, Greg tried to defend himself by insisting that he was just reacting to what the twins showed, that the trunks were female bikini bottoms, and that people were lying to damage his reputation.
It was clearly designed in this way. The Trend Twins posted themselves in posing trunks, highly sus. I'm pointing out what everyone was thinking about. But I'm a pet. I read the comments and you call me a pet. You make it look like there's something wrong with me. I'm a creep. Now, had you...
But bodybuilding trunks are standard. They were nothing unusual. The twins didn't zoom in or emphasize that area in their own video. Greg did that himself. People weren't buying it. For the first time, even Greg's loyal followers were calling him out. What made the situation worse was Greg's emotional response. Instead of taking accountability, he lashed out, claiming he was being slandered. insisting that he was the realest of the real, announcing he might sue people for defamation, and making himself the victim. The same man who had spent years humiliating others on camera suddenly couldn't handle criticism when the spotlight turned on him. However, the biggest controversy was the one involving Hussein Farhat. The controversy didn't just expose a questionable Natty claim, it exposed one of the clearest cracks in Greg Doucette's entire brand. Hussein Farhat rose to attention by showcasing a massive 3-year transformation, the kind of dramatic leap in muscularity, leanness, and density that would raise red flags for anyone even mildly familiar with PED usage. Hussein insisted he was natural, but to most viewers, the leaps in size, proportions, and maturity looked indistinguishable from a heavy cycle. Naturally, Greg did what Greg always does. He called him out.
Does anyone actually believe that this guy is natural? Let's look at the best chart in the world for predicting muscle growth. The real journey of natural muscle gains. And so in year 1, if you have great genetics, you can expect to gain somewhere between 8 and 12 pounds of muscle. Year 2, 6 to 8, and year 3, 4 to 6. And so let's assume he has really good genetics, which clearly he does. If you add up those 3 years, it would be about 26 pounds of muscle, yet he built double that. Now remember, if he has beyond great genetics, elite level genetics, perhaps 1 in a million genetics, it is in fact possible. But does this guy have the 1 in a million?
In his first assessments, Greg dismissed Hussein's Natty claim outright. He described the transformation as beyond the limits of natural physiology, pointing out the unreal rate of recomposition and the sheer amount of lean mass gained. It was classic Greg, and his audience trusted him. After all, this was the guy who called out The Rock, the Trend Twins, Liver King, Hollywood actors, and almost every influencer with a suspicious physique. Then the situation took a sharp turn. Hussein released blood work. That alone isn't unusual. Many influencers do this to defend their natty status. What was unusual was Greg's reaction. Instead of scrutinizing the labs, questioning the methodology, pointing out loopholes, or clarifying that blood tests can be manipulated or mistimed, which were all things Greg has said countless times in other videos, he immediately pivoted.
Very good blood work result. Certainly indicative of a guy that could put on all this muscle. One more thing, cholesterol. When you're on steroids, HRT even, oftentimes your HDL is going to go down. Anytime I did blood work when I was on steroids, my HDL was very low. It was crashed. His HDL, it's right in the normal. It's at the middle.
Almost overnight, Greg went from labeling the transformation downright impossible to defending Hussein as a natural genetic anomaly. But it didn't stop there. Shortly after reversing his stance, Greg announced that Hussein had become a co-owner of his supplement company, HTLT. That single decision detonated the controversy. Viewers weren't stupid. They immediately saw what many believed Greg was trying to pretend wasn't obvious. The natty reversal aligned perfectly with a business partnership. Greg now had a financial incentive to promote Hussein's elite natty genetics as real. Greg was using Hussein as living proof that his lifestyle, coaching, and supplements could produce freakish results naturally. In other words, everything Greg accused other influencers of doing, blending truth with marketing, bending reality for sales, using questionable physiques to promote supplements, and he was now doing himself. Worse, people noticed something deeper. The entire situation contradicted Greg's own behavior. When other influencers showed blood tests, Greg would say things like, "Blood work proves nothing, and the timing matters. You can stop gear weeks before. You cannot trust labs from someone trying to sell a product." But suddenly, for Hussein, none of that applied. A lot of people across the fitness space began calling out Greg for hypocrisy. What made it worse was Greg's own persona and obsession with being seen as the realest of the real. The constant need to declare himself the most honest creator alive. In the end, the Hussein Farhat controversy didn't just introduce a shady natty claim, it shattered the illusion that Greg was immune to the same incentives he spent years criticizing. It exposed that when business is involved, even Greg Doucette is willing to change the narrative if the price and partnership are right. You see, Greg Doucette's public image began to fracture long before the recent controversies. Underneath the polished veneer of Coach Greg, the truth teller, lived a complicated history that many have repeatedly resurfaced. A history that cast long legal and ethical shadows over everything he does today. Years before building a multi-million-dollar brand, Greg was charged in Canada for possessing, importing, trafficking, and distributing anabolic steroids. Court documents revealed that many of the seized vials contained no actual active ingredients at all, meaning he was not only selling illegal drugs, but in multiple instances, fake ones. Although he avoided jail time and received what many saw as an astonishingly lenient $50,000 fine, the stigma of that operation has never fully gone away. Today, when he positions himself as a reformed educator discouraging PED use, critics argue that his past fundamentally undercuts the credibility of his current preaching. The tension between former underground dealer and fitness moral authority never truly leaves the conversation, and online communities regularly weaponize that contradiction to question how much of Greg's persona is genuine and how much is strategically repackaged for profit. The background bleeds directly into the ongoing debate surrounding the legitimacy of his supplement company. As his brand ballooned, so did scrutiny, and many independent reviewers started buying, testing, and chemically analyzing his products. The results were brutal. Across multiple tests, critics found that some supplements contained only trace amounts of the ingredients Greg prominently advertised. The most infamous example was Turkesterone. While Greg marketed his formula as real, authentic, proven, and superior to competing products, assays showed minimal, measurable quantities of actual turkesterone inside. Instead of addressing the gap plainly, Greg argued that other companies were worse, claiming their raw materials came from copycat plants or China knockoffs, and insisted his formula still worked because of other, less discussed compounds inside the blend.
Some people are trying turkesterone saying it doesn't work, and I'm like, yeah, but you're trying it from China, and it's not even from the Ajuga turkestanica plant. Like, there's an actual plant that's the one that works, and people are using this copycat plant, which is, it's not horrible, but it would be kind of like, I don't know if you know much about weed, marijuana, like you have like your basic like weed or like a quad A. Like
his explanations often contradicted earlier promotional claims, fueling accusations that he'd quietly moved the goalposts. As these cracks widened, another shift in Greg's public persona became impossible to ignore. He was burning out and burning his audience out with him. The daily uploads, the constant callouts, the escalating commentary, the reaction cycles, the algorithm-chasing meta, they formed a predictable loop of manufactured urgency. Greg admitted openly in interviews that drama skyrockets his views, and his content calendar began to reflect that truth perfectly. Every trending name in fitness became a target. Every minor controversy became a 10 to 20 minute reaction video. The volume of uploads created the illusion of constant crisis, but in reality it was simply the business model he had locked himself into. Daily outrage paid the bills. Daily content fed the supplement funnel. Daily drama maintained his relevance in a crowded industry. Yet that formula came at a cost. The more Greg leaned into conflict-driven content, the further he drifted from the calm, educational figure who once built trust through transparency and expertise. The speed and frequency of uploads made introspection impossible. There was always another drama to chase, another physique to critique, another influencer to dissect. Eventually, even Greg had become aware that he was trapped by the very machine he built. But with millions of dollars in revenue on the line and an audience conditioned to expect high-volume commentary, stepping back wasn't an option. The grind continued, and Greg continued with it, and he became increasingly dependent on controversy to sustain the brand he once built on credibility. And despite the tough exterior he projects online, Greg's life behind the scenes reveals a human cost that most viewers never see. For years, he has spoken openly, sometimes jokingly, about being diagnosed with narcolepsy, a neurological disorder that causes sudden, uncontrollable sleep episodes.
I could not sleep. It was so bad. I was in Mexico and I was sleeping like 3 hours a day, and I'm going to the drugstore and I'm buying like, what the hell was
whatever knocks you out.
What were those pills called? The latter ones, the white ones. It's a drug.
I think.
Thank God I threw it out at the airport before.
Is it a muscle?
You weren't
relaxant?
on the trip, but like I thought I told you about this.
Is it a muscle relaxant?
It was like Xanax or something.
Yeah.
It was. I literally could not sleep. I was like, oh my God, I can't sleep. I was sleeping like 3 hours max a day.
Friends, partners, and even fans have caught him dozing off mid-conversation, during movies, on dates, or even while sitting upright. It became a running joke in his relationships, but beneath the humor was a serious medical condition Greg has had to manage his entire adult life. Ironically, the very supplement that helped build his brand, Turkesterone, made this condition even more complicated. Greg admits that turkesterone gives him explosive aggression and drive in the gym, describing it as a steroid-like surge of energy. But that same intensity comes with a downside: severe insomnia. When he takes it too late in the day, he can barely sleep, sometimes clocking only 3 hours a night, lying awake wired and restless. He's described periods where he was sleeping like a zombie, unable to shut his brain off, desperately buying over-the-counter sleep aids in foreign countries just to function. Even when he limits his dosage to the mornings, he still sleeps fewer hours than normal, yet somehow feels wired, overstimulated, and ready to attack the weights.
Is this stuff? He's like, I normally sleep 8 hours. I'm sleeping like 4 or 5, but I feel like I'm good to go.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like slightly concerned about it, but like the studies say that it's safe. Blood work comes back safe.
This vulnerability is compounded by his extreme sensitivity to stimulants. While many lifters chug 3 caffeinated drinks without flinching, Greg can spiral into full-body jitters from a single venti cold brew. In one video experiment, he tried living on the caffeine-heavy diet of his partner: 2 massive cold brews followed by an energy drink, and immediately felt his body explode into shakes, anxiety, and sleeplessness. The stimulants that most gym-goers use casually hit Greg like a freight train, amplifying the same nervous system hypersensitivity that makes turkesterone both a blessing and a curse in his life. Yet, despite his exhaustion, insomnia, and neurological strain, Greg refuses to slow down because his lifestyle has become tied to an addiction far more powerful than caffeine or supplements: the addiction to work, validation, and the intoxicating rush of being admired. For years, Greg has uploaded daily content, keeping himself locked in a non-stop production cycle that feeds the algorithm but drains the creator behind it. And the reward system is potent. Every expo he attends gives him what he calls a dopamine high. He meets hundreds, sometimes thousands of fans who tell him he changed their lives, helped them lose weight, guided their diets, or inspired their fitness transformations. He's described these days as emotionally overwhelming, like receiving a lifetime's worth of compliments compressed into 8 hours.
After the day was done, it was such a like dopamine high of like when you hear 100 people say that you changed their lives or you helped them so much, or their dad was going to die and they bought the book and they lost weight, and it's like all day you hear such like the biggest, like most people would have what I experienced in one day in their entire life spread out of compliments, and I'm getting it in like 8 hours. I'm like, how do I ever like live that down, like that moment? So when I read hate comments online, and I'm like, my bank of compliments is so full that it's spilling over. And so if you make
those interactions form what Greg calls his bank of compliments, a reservoir of positive memories so powerful that he uses it as armor against the hate, backlash, and controversy that swarm his comment sections. Whenever someone mocks him, calls him toxic, or accuses him of bullying, he mentally withdraws from that bank. It keeps him grounded, keeps him motivated, and most importantly, keeps him uploading no matter how tiring the lifestyle becomes. This combination of neurological strain, stimulant sensitivity, insomnia, and a near-compulsive need to stay productive created a version of Greg who's constantly walking the tightrope between burnout and obsession. The human toll is undeniable, but in Greg's world, slowing down isn't an option. Greg's rise to online fame didn't come without friction from the platforms that hosted him. As his voice grew louder and his opinions sharpened, he began clashing with algorithmic systems that, in his view, were unfairly targeting him. Over time, this became one of the most frustrating battles of his career: the war against censorship and shadow banning. On Instagram, the consequences were immediate and painfully visible. Greg has been stuck in a long-term shadow ban that prevents his name from appearing in the search bar unless someone types out his full handle. Even then, it barely shows up. Approaching 1 million followers, he found himself losing several thousand each week because new people simply couldn't find him. Fans would try tagging him only to realize his account was buried. Meeting someone in person and trying to look him up became an awkward moment.
almost a year to get back. And other people I know, they were talking against like COVID, saying it's bull or whatever. They didn't believe in it. And they take down their videos to get no views. And it's like, how can you do that? So like, to me, it's like censorship is so bad. Yeah. And so that happened to me. I was getting 20 to 30 million views a month. And all of a sudden I was at like 10. Yeah. And it took a year to come back. And I'm like I was quite concerned, like my videos weren't doing very well. And eventually it came back.
For a creator whose livelihood depends on visibility, this was devastating. Greg blames the shadow ban on topics he frequently discusses: steroids, COVID, and other unsafe for advertiser themes, and he's repeatedly said he finds the system unjust and damaging to creators who aren't breaking any explicit rules. YouTube brought its own troubles. Greg once released a video criticizing the World Health Organization's classification of aspartame as a potential carcinogen. The video exploded with views in the first 24 hours, and then flatlined. Almost instantly, his channel-wide viewership dropped by 50%. Videos that normally pulled 200 to 300k struggled to break 50k. The crash lasted nearly a year. Greg wasn't the only one. He referenced Dr. Eric Berg, a massive creator with millions of subscribers who also saw similar suppression after posting content the algorithm deemed too controversial.
Eric Berg?
Oh, yeah.
So he made all his videos, and all his were like the top search, like 10 million views. He was doing good. Now, I disagree with almost everything he says, but I feel he has the right to say it. And so he started doing these videos, and they shadow banned him because he was talking about a certain thing. He promotes keto, and all his views went down.
TikTok was even harsher. After defending a man who politely asked a woman for her number at a gas station, an interaction online mobs misinterpreted as harassment, Greg was swarmed with 58,000 negative comments and coordinated mass reporting. TikTok didn't investigate, they simply removed his entire account. Greg lost millions of potential views, a profitable funnel for supplement sales, and a major social media foothold. No appeals worked. His account was gone permanently. To him, it was proof of a broken system. If enough people dislike your opinion, they can erase your presence with a single outrage spiral.
TikTok's a perfect example. It's all these little dances and like half naked. They're like kids doing it half the time. I made a video defending this guy that went to a gas station and he hit on a girl, asked for a number, whatever. And I made a video and I got 58,000 not views, not likes, negative comments, all against me. And everyone mass reported my Instagram and it got taken down.
Over the years, Greg Doucette's identity has undergone a dramatic shift, not just in how the fitness world sees him, but in how he sees himself. For most of his life, Greg's sense of worth was tied to being a physical anomaly, the jacked bodybuilder pushing extreme limits, lifting absurd weights, and running hefty cycles of anabolic steroids to stay competitive in open-class bodybuilding. He built his reputation on mass, strength, and the willingness to push harder than anyone else. But age, health concerns, and self-reflection forced a transformation he never expected. He transitioned into classic physique, a division requiring a smaller, more aesthetic look with strict weight caps. To compete legally and safely, he had to lose muscle, not gain it. The switch forced him to rethink everything: his dosages, his diet, his training philosophy, and the ego tied to being the biggest guy in the room. Eventually, he stepped away from heavy cycles altogether and moved to TRT only, becoming open about the dosage, frequency, and reasoning behind his hormone replacement. What once defined him, blasting gear, chasing size, maxing out lifts, no longer aligned with the message he wanted to send or the longevity he wanted to protect.
Now I'm like into the slower lifting, like slow eccentric with the pause and the stretch and the squeeze, higher reps. I only need one warm-up set. So I do an hour on the bike. I'm warm. There's like, I'm done.
You always do an hour on the bike.
Well, sometimes if I'm lacking time, I might do only 30 minutes, then I kind of feel guilty. Because I'm like, I'm training for bike
racing.
racing.
That's going to like negatively impact the session though?
I don't care though. See, I'm a bike rider who happens to have muscle.
Okay.
Versus I was a bodybuilder that did cardio before a show because I'm trying to get ripped, and I just did. And I was like, I'm 40. Like I said, I got to stop taking gear, you know. And I went from being an open class type bodybuilder, taking as much steroids as I could possibly take, to now I'm in classic. I have to lose 8 to 10 pounds of muscle. So now my cycle is like tiny because if I take any more, I won't make the weight class.
Greg often pauses to reflect on how unusual his rise has been. Most fitness stars hit their peak before they can legally rent a car. But Greg became a global name in his 40s, long after most people in his industry have retired or burned out. He appreciates this late-life fame in a way younger creators simply can't. When he looks at figures like Chris Bumstead or Alex Eubank, he sees two young men carrying the weight of enormous expectations long before they've had the chance to figure out who they are. He empathizes with them, but is also thankful he didn't get famous that early. He believes he's far more grounded now, more prepared, more appreciative. As he often says, the fame feels sweeter when you spent decades being a normal person first. This perspective shapes the way he lives. Greg rejects the idea of long-term planning, claiming he genuinely doesn't think about what he'll be doing next month, let alone next year. For him, life is best lived one moment at a time, whether he's traveling, filming a video, doing an expo appearance, or simply sitting at a pool. He insists on being completely present. The future doesn't excite him, the moment does.
I'm excited for right now at this moment, so I don't look forward to anything. I'm looking forward to this moment right now and be present in the moment. Like, I don't...
Yet beneath the drama, the controversies, the explosive personality, and the endless memes, Greg reveals a surprisingly simple philosophy: contentment. He insists he doesn't need anything more than what he has now. He doesn't chase status, awards, or legacy. His life filled with traveling, coaching, riding his bike, running his businesses, interacting with fans is enough. The chaotic highs of expos, the lows of online hate, the censorship battles, the business wins, the failed relationships, the lifelong quirks like narcolepsy, all of it adds up to a flawed, complex, but ultimately self-aware man who's learned to enjoy the very things so many people miss while chasing success: the present.
Is there anything you want to do that you've not done yet?
Actually, I had this thought the other day, and there isn't anything that I could list. Because if it was, I would just do it. Like, why not?